Have you ever had a connection with an animal that just felt different? Like beyond the usual pet and owner relationship? Imagine waking up every single day to the same wild bird greeting you like a tiny feathery alarm clock. Not in a cage, not trained, just showing up. That's exactly what happened to this one guy. He didn't ask for it. He didn't go out looking for a bird buddy. It just happened. And what makes it even crazier, this bird, a raven, wasn't just sticking around. It was obsessed with him. His routines, his stuff, even his morning coffee. But before we get into all that, let's rewind to where it all started. This guy, let's call him Mark, was a teacher. He loved his job, loved working with kids, and spent most of his time at school. One day, some of his students found something unusual, a tiny, scruffy-looking baby bird, completely alone. No nest, no mother in sight, just a helpless little thing shivering on the ground. Now, what would you do in that situation? Would you walk away and hope nature took care of it? Or would you pick it up and try to help? Mark didn't hesitate. He scooped up the little bird, held it in his hands, and knew right then he couldn't just leave it. It was too small to survive on its own, too weak, so he took it home. And that's how Klaus, the raven, came into his life. At first, it was just about keeping the bird alive, feeding him, making sure he was warm, giving him a safe place to grow. But then something unexpected happened. Klaus didn't just survive. He bonded with Mark in a way that didn't make any sense. Most birds, especially wild ones, don't stick around once they learn to fly. They take off. That's nature, right? But not Klaus. Even when he grew big enough to explore the sky, he always came back, every single day. He'd fly off, do whatever birds do out there. And then, like clockwork, he'd return. He wasn't in a cage. He wasn't trapped. He had complete freedom, but he chose to stay close to Mark. Why? What made this bird so attached to one person? Maybe it was because Mark raised him. Maybe it was because he felt safe. Or maybe, just maybe, Klaus saw Mark as more than just a person. Maybe he saw him as family. And that's when things started getting weird. Klaus wasn't just hanging around. He was watching Mark, studying him, almost like he was trying to understand how humans lived. Ever had a pet that seems a little too smart, like they know more than they should? That was Klaus. He became obsessed with Mark's everyday life. If Mark reached into his pockets, Klaus wanted to see what was inside. If Mark sat down to drink coffee, Klaus wanted to know what was in the cup. If Mark picked up a book, Klaus would try to grab it too. One time, Mark left his headphones on the table. Klaus picked them up, turned them over in his beak, and started tapping them, like he was trying to figure out what they were. Can you imagine that? A bird trying to understand technology. And the coffee thing? That became a daily ritual. Every morning, Mark would sit down with his cup of coffee, and every morning, Klaus would land right next to him, waiting. Not for food, not for attention, just to be part of the moment. Now, before you ask, no, Mark didn't let him drink real coffee. He knew caffeine was bad for birds. But Klaus didn't care about the drink. He just wanted to be there. It was like Klaus didn't see himself as a bird anymore. He saw himself as part of Mark's world. And it wasn't just mornings. In the afternoons, Klaus had his own weird little routine. The backyard had this small garden with a water fountain, and Klaus loved it. He'd hop in, splash around, and basically turn it into his personal spa. He'd spread his wings, tip his head under, shake off the water, like he was having the time of his life. Then, the best part, Mark would bring out a hairdryer. Yeah, you heard that right. A hairdryer. And Klaus, he loved it. He'd stand there, eyes half closed, letting the warm air fluff up his feathers. You ever see a bird get a blow dry? It's the funniest thing. But here's what's crazy. This wasn't some trained parrot doing tricks for a treat. This was a wild raven, and he trusted Mark completely. That's when Mark realized this wasn't just a pet. This wasn't even just a friendship. This was something deeper. Because think about it. How often do you hear about a human and a raven being this close? It's not like raising a dog or a cat. It's not normal. And yet, here they were. And Mark knew how rare this was. Not everyone gets to have a bond like this. Most of us love animals, sure, but how many of us get to experience something that feels almost unexplainable? It made Mark appreciate the little things more. The quiet mornings, the weird, funny moments, the fact that, out of all the places in the world, Klaus kept choosing to come back to him. It made him think, how many special connections do we miss out on because we're too busy, too distracted, too caught up in life? How often do we take the relationships we have, whether with people or animals, for granted? Because at the end of the day, the best things in life aren't planned. They just happen. And sometimes they come in the form of a small, scruffy bird who refuses to leave your side. So maybe the real lesson here isn't just about a man and a raven. Maybe it's about all of us. About slowing down, paying attention, appreciating the weird, unexpected moments that make life worth living. And who knows? Maybe there's a Klaus waiting for you somewhere. Maybe not a bird, but a person, an animal, a connection you never saw coming. All you have to do is be open to it. Before you go, if this story made you feel something, if it made you smile, think, or even just appreciate life a little more, do me a favor. Hit the like button. Share this with someone who loves animals. And if you want more stories like this, subscribe to the channel. Because the world is full of amazing stories, and I'd love to share more of them with you. See you in the next one.